Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Antonio from Still Point Ayurveda in Philadelphia, and here to talk about anxiety, depression, and the holidays. And so, this time of year, especially, tends to bring up anxiety and depression. And so, as a disclaimer, I must say, if you do suffer from chronic anxiety or chronic depression, and it's an actual diagnosis of yours, um, some of the recommendations could apply to you, but definitely I would support you in seeking a healthcare professional, an authority in the psych field, to support you with this mental health component. Because if it's something very deep and deeply rooted, then it definitely requires significant support through various authorities. Ayurveda can help, but it's also important to make sure you have a mental health component in place that supports this adventure or journey with holistic medicine. But some of the things that I'll discuss here in this short talk will also apply to you, because if you have anxiety and depression to begin with, then this time of year gets amplified. If you don't normally have anxiety and depression, then this tends to be the time of year where these things come up. And we can look at the different levels of how anxiety and depression express themselves, and we could see, in diet and lifestyle and practices like this, what can help remediate, if not reduce or alleviate, some of the expression of this. And, this time of year brings up a lot of things for people. There's less sunlight, there's less vitamin D in the body. We don't have access to the same kind of bountiful fruits and vegetables that we did during the summer, and the exuberance of the sun and the outdoors activities. Normally we're invited to come inward. It's a hibernating time of year. And with the pandemic already looming over us, it amplifies everything that already happens naturally throughout the year, just because of all the restrictions and regulations and safety measures that are in place to support reducing COVID. So there's one more significant issue that's added to the mental scheme of things, the mental sphere of things. So we have to navigate a lot of different pieces this time of year. And so first it's about having the mindfulness and the connection to the collective components of the day, the time of year, the season, like looking at all these things and reflecting upon, wow, like my anxiety or depression increases this time of year. What could be some of the triggers? What could be some of the causes? And how do I put things in place to make sure that I'm supported, and so that I don't go down this downward spiral? First and foremost, it's important to be able to understand that every emotion is valid, and things come up to the canvas of the mind from this emotional state, and we're invited to really hold space for it, or look at it, observe it, reflect upon it, and do some work around it. Some inner work, some outer work, things like that. And when we factor in these other variables, such as it's this time of year, it's the holiday season. I've always said this for quite a long time, actually, that the heartstrings are pulled more so this time of year, just because it tends to be a more sentimental time of year, and lots of other things happen. Statistically, it's shown that the winter months are the months where people tend to have a higher mortality rate, especially the elderly. It's just a correlative factor. And so, things do die. And when we go into hibernation, it seems like things are quieting down. We're going inward. Doors are closed, windows are shut. We're less likely to be outside unless we're doing some sort of hiking or activities or going to and from places. And, again, this time of year we're supported by amazing foods that are meant to be grounding, and they're sweet, and they're demulcent, and they're warming, and they're heavy, to counter the qualities of the cold, dry season as part of early winter and fall consist of. And so when we look at ourselves and we look at causative factors in our own life, we get to see, like, what is it within my mind that the anxiety feels fed by? Am I staying up late? Am I just still eating on the go? Have I depleted myself from the summertime? Because the depletion through the summertime will only exacerbate this component of the nervous system, which will stimulate the anxiety. For depression, what kind of depression is it? Is it related to nostalgia? Is it related to not having a purpose? Is it not Is it related to not having control of certain circumstances because as we're forced inward because of nature, and if we're, forced inward a little bit more so because of COVID, like does this stir up any kind of anger? So like there are different levels of depression in general. And again, if you already are diagnosed with a type of anxiety or a type of depression, then those factors will be, the ones that I've just mentioned will amplify the pre-existing condition. It's just, cause and effect. It just happens more so in people who are, suffering from PTSD and anxiety and things like that. So we have to look at these factors. And sometimes, as a simple exercise, just write down, reflect on your years past and notice, oh yeah, it's true. Every time around this time of year, these other things happen. Does your health decline? Because, health declining sometimes can happen, like I said, through excess or depletion. And then we have to say, maybe my body is not running optimally. And so therefore, the micronutrients from whatever foods I'm taking or not taking in are not getting to their appropriate places in the body, the appropriate systems to produce a positive outcome of mind. Anxiety will come and go. Depression will come and go in general. That's just an emotion. But for certain people that are predisposed, um, there's a lingering, and sometimes it just plants itself in the consciousness to some degree, and then it just starts to just well up, especially if we don't look at these things. And so it really does require a reflection. It does require self-awareness. It does require accountability and self-responsibility, and getting the right support. So if it's generalized anxiety and depression and you have friends around you, the supportive structure of friends or family, things like that, then you can share these things with them. If it's more of a chronic condition or a diagnosed condition, then obviously having a mental health practitioner in place to specifically work on those issues that are more underlying. PTSD would fall into that kind of category. And so when we have the right things in place, the right community in place, the right medicines, because community is part of the medicine. We're surrounded by good people and people that we love and care about, that respect us and understand us and are holding space for us and hear us and things like that. That's part of the medicine. It just helps us feel good because we're all human, and we have our lows and we have our highs. This is part of the nature of just being human, and this is definitely the consistent truth with the fluctuations of the mind, that it just kind of comes and goes, and when it's more unruly, then it has more ammunition to get amplified in its own place. So there's like a general scheme. If we look at things in a bell curve kind of example, the average person will have some anxiety and depression, but also have the right internal resources and external resources in place to support moving through these emotions to whatever capacity. And then the outside of the bell curve is the extremes, where significant help is needed to really navigate this terrain. So, just look at what's happening in your lifestyle. Are you staying up too late, which can increase anxiety? Are you sleeping in during the daytime, which could add to depression? Are you eating too much? Are you eating too little? Are you not exercising enough to get the heart rate moving, to get the circulation going? Do you have an amazing or proper outlet for the anxiety? Sometimes anxiety produces this sort of outer energy, this kind of like shaking experience that you feel like you have to do something with this energy. So you have a proper positive outlet for it to circumvent it, so that you can actually move this kind of energy while also figuring out how to ground yourself in the anxiety. Because anxiety is upward, it's stimulating. And so we have to bring it down. The mind is projecting into the future. And how do we bring it back to the present moment? The depressive aspect is going to have components of, well, I have no purpose, I'm worried about tomorrow, who am I going to be, what am I going to be, what am I meant to be, or reminiscing on the past, and that's a different level of heaviness than the previous version of the depression. So looking at all these things and seeing, like, what is it specifically for you? What are the specific triggers? Do you have the right things in place, like diet and lifestyle, to really create a foundation so that the mind can have less reason to be as tumultuous in its own way? So these are some recommendations, and I'm always open to working with new patients, and feel free to private message me. I'll probably continue this topic at a later time, if not next time. during the season to support all of you who can feel supported by Ayurvedic medicine and a holistic approach with the yogic sciences. And I have my yoga classes on Tuesdays and Friday mornings at 8 a.m. And I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you all again. And I'm totally here to support you in whatever capacity possible. Have an amazing day and onward and upward.